What is up, guys? My name is Keggernaut, but just call me Kegg, and I'm here on the PTR for patch 7.1, and I thought that I'd let you guys know on some of the tank changes that's going to be happening for the Brewmaster, the Guardian Druid, and the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Now, instead of having to add more annotations or whatever to the guide videos that are already out, or just making a whole new guide, like that's just kind of a waste of time, and it's not really worth anybody else's time. So I thought that I'd just make this video and let you guys know what are the changes, and adjust your playstyle accordingly depending on what you like, what you see, whatever. So for the Vengeance Demon Hunter, the changes taking effect are in the talents. Now, a couple of them are going to be a little dividing. You might not like what's happening or whatever, but let's just go and jump right in it. So Row 99, Agonizing Flames. On PTR right now, it says that Immolation Aura increases your movement speed by 30% and deals 30% increased damage. On live servers, it's actually 50% increased damage. So there is a 20% damage nerf to our Immolation Aura when using Agonizing Flames. Now, it's not too much of a big problem. We thought that this was going to happen sooner or later because it does so much damage. This talent is so good, and it was hands down just the go-to. There was nothing else. I mean, I said Abyssal Strike was okay for world content, but other than that, Abyssal Strike isn't even that great for anything else. So Agonizing Flames was still the one to go to. But now on the PTR, I was discussing with some of the math people, and also looking at what the theory crafters were thinking of, and they've actually said that Agonizing Flames is still obviously the go-to for AoE damage. Don't change that. So dungeons is still the one that you're going to want to pick. But if you're really trying to min-max your stuff in a Mythic Plus, well, I guess not in a Mythic Plus, you can't change your talents, but on a raid, on single target only, very specific, single target only, Razor Spikes actually pulls ahead just a bit. Now, what Razor Spikes does, while Demon Spikes is active, you deal 20% increased physical damage, and your melee attacks snare targets by 50% for 6 seconds. Now, none of this has changed from live to PTR. None of it has changed. Just the nerf to Agonizing Flames is the reason why Razor Spikes pulls ahead just a bit in single target. Now, really, I said that it wasn't that great to use this in the guide video, and I still stand by it. If you really, really need to min-max your DPS, then you can choose Razor Spikes. But this playstyle is weird, because you want to use Demon Spikes for defensive capabilities. Obviously, it's your active mitigation, and you get damage reduction, and that's what you want to use it for. You don't want to use it for physical damage increase. Like, you don't want to use that. I mean, you can if it works out correctly, but it's just weird to use it. It's not right, in my opinion. And so basically what you're going to do is, this actually also it pairs really, really, really well with Fracture, because Fracture is your hardest hitting single target physical damage ability, and Razor Spikes only increases physical damage by 20%. So if you want to use this, Fracture isn't too out of the books to use either, because like on Nathendra, you rarely need soul cleaves, like not that much. So Fracture you could use a lot more to increase your damage done. So how this is going to work is you're going to generate pain, right? And ideally, to get the most out of it, you're going to want to have literally max pain. You're going to want to have 100 pain, right? And you're going to use Demon Spikes, which is going to cost 20 pain, and then you're going to want to use 2 Fractures back to back. If that's what you're using as your talents, Fracture you can use 2 back to back. So use Demon Spikes and then get 2 Fractures, and then try and fit as many shears into that pain window as much as possible. Now, I didn't do it completely correctly, because I could have fit in another soul cleave, albeit a cheap soul cleave, maybe like 30-35 pain, but either way, like, I still would have gotten that damage increase if that's what I was looking to do, to just get as much damage as possible. But if you're not using Fracture, then this works a little bit easier, but not too different. Now you see I'm doing like 2 million damage. That's because this is a level 60 training dummy. But either way, the message still stands. You're just going to be doing more damage. So you don't have to have a full pain bar like I do right now. But basically, you're going to want to use Demon Spikes and then Soul Cleave right after, and then fit in as many shears as possible. Track that duration, and then Soul Cleave again right before, because you got to make sure that the global cooldowns line up the right way. Otherwise, you're going to miss out on some damage. Now, really, what the theory crafters and the math people have said is that Razor Spikes only pulls ahead a little bit in single target. There's very, very few single target situations in Legion that you're going to be tanking, so Razor Spikes isn't even going to be used that often anyway. But what you can do is, if you do want to use it, you could either change your playstyle, like what I just displayed for you right now, or what you can do is just use your demon spikes as you would normally and just fit in, you know, your shears or your soul cleaves, your fractures, however much. You don't even have to think about it. You could just act like it's a very passive ability. You don't have to change your playstyle, and you still will get that damage increase. Just keep it in the back of your head that while Demon Spikes is active, if you want that extra damage, try not to use Immolation Aura right when it comes off. Try not to use Fellblade. Try not to use Sigil of Flame. Don't use those things because you're just wasting time on that damage increase. But they're very, very close to each other. Agonizing Flames and Razor Spikes. If you don't like how Razor Spikes works, you can just use Agonizing Flames and be perfectly fine. Nothing changes with your playstyle. So let's go on to Spirit Bomb. Spirit Bomb on PTR right now, and what's going to happen when the patch drops, you heal for 15% of all damage you deal to enemies with Frailty. This was 10% on live, now it's 15%, so it's just a little bit more healing. It makes it actually pretty competitive with Fell Devastation, because the more enemies you have, Spirit Bomb is going to do a lot more healing. And already on live, Spirit Bomb does more healing than Fell Devastation. That's not, you know, completely like crazy to say. It does do more healing, but it's more overall healing. It's not, you know, on demand. I need healing now. I just took a big hit, you know, or I'm taking a lot of ads. Like, that's not the case. Spirit Bomb does a lot of healing over time. You know, that's the biggest thing. It does a lot of healing over time. 15% with your leech, and then if you have charred warblades, it's 30% on your fire damage, stuff like that. So this actually works a little bit better. I tried it out. It's a little bit more responsive right now. I'm not like spamming the key in order to launch a soul fragment. It works when I want it to, and I really, really like that. But still, Fell Devastation, I believe, is probably the better choice. Although Spirit Bomb, you can use that, and nobody should really blame you or judge you for it, because it does do more healing, and it is more functional now with the patch. But row 110. Row 110. Row 110. Okay, so Soul Barrier was buffed a little bit. The shield aspect has not changed at all, but the duration of the buff has gone from 8 seconds to 12 seconds. So what that means is that you can fit more soul fragments to get more shielding, or you just have a longer 10% damage reduction, because that minimum absorption that it says right there in the middle, Soul Barrier's absorption cannot be reduced below whatever number, right? That will last for longer, okay? Because like I said, one boss swing is going to knock out that damage, that shield. Max shield, max soul fragments, it's going to knock it out in basically one hit. But that small little absorption is around 10% damage reduction that I said in the guide video. Now, instead of lasting 8 seconds, it lasts 12 seconds. So it's just a little bit more functional, but still, the way that you use it is not really changing. Last Resort is still, in my eyes, the absolute better choice. I said that if you don't see yourself dying, you don't need to use Last Resort. But then again, somebody commented on that video that Soul Barrier, if you don't see yourself dying with Last Resort and you want to use Soul Barrier, if you're not going to die in the first place, then you might as well just do as much damage as possible. And if you use Soul Barrier, that's 30 pain that you're using. You're wasting out on a fracture, you're wasting out on more soul cleaves. So it's actually a DPS loss to use Soul Barrier, so you could just stick with Last Resort anyway and possibly force proc it. Just say to your healer, don't heal me, or like if you're on voice comms, just don't heal me, and then you want to proc this, and then you actually get more damage because you're generating more pain per second, you're getting more fractures, more soul cleaves, whatever you guys want to do. So that's kind of the differences right now with the Vengeance Demon Hunter. Let's just go ahead and jump over to the Guardian Druid, and I'll show you guys what that's about. Okay, so now I'm here on my Guardian Druid, and there's just a very small change that I think you guys should really notice when it comes to tanking. The first change actually is that your travel form now moves at mount speed, 100% increased movement speed. I really like this. They got rid of the glyph before, and I was really sad about it, but now that they've added it by default, so you don't have to worry about it, you just get more movement speed. I really, really like that. This also, it only works out of combat. When you're in combat, it's only going to be 60% like it is usual. But besides that, Galactic Guardian. Galactic Guardian is what's actually being changed a little bit for Guardian Druids. On live, first, your damage has 10% chance to trigger Moonfire. That's not changed, that's still the same. But the secondary effect is what has actually changed. Now, Moonfire, when you cast it, generates 10 rage instead of 15 rage, and it deals 300% increased direct damage. That is not something that is on live. So, what this does actually is it makes it, it's actually overall a buff, I think. because yeah, we lose 5 rage generation when we use Galactic Guardian, but that was going to happen anyway. Like, we knew we were going to get a rage nerf because it was just too good, right? So it's not too bad, but still, that 300% increased damage, that's the thing that I'm really looking at here. Soul of the Forest, I've said, is the way to use for single target. So Nithendra and Ursoc, normal and heroic, that's basically what you can use it on. But okay, so let's look here. All right, so without using Soul of the Forest, Mangle is going to do... Well, it crits every time I try to do this. All right, but I believe it does around 104k by itself. All right, well, 101k, 102k. That's basically what Mangle is doing. 106k, it varies a little bit. But that's what Mangle is doing, right? If I'm using Soul of the Forest, right, it should increase the damage of Mangle by 15%, right? So we had 101 to 106k before. Let's do it now, and it does 123k, 125k. I've seen it change a little bit. So roughly, we're only getting 20,000 increased damage by using Soul of the Forest on single target. Yeah, we generate 5 more rage, which makes it generate 11 rage, right? And that's more smooth rage over time because it's guaranteed. Every time you press Mangle, you're going to get that. Galactic Guardian is only RNG. But I wholeheartedly think Galactic Guardian is now the default choice. Unless you want to use the DPS burst from Guardian of Ursoc Incarnation, Soul of the Forest is basically a useless talent in my eyes. Because Galactic Guardian now, I use it for everything. I never use Soul of the Forest. I use Galactic Guardian for everything. And I feel that even on single target, it procs enough for me to use and be perfectly fine with my rage generation. So now, if I look here, Moonfire does... crits again. Alright, well, Moonfire does 26k damage, 27k sometimes. That's what's going to happen every single time, right? But when I get a Galactic Guardian proc, first things first is they added this weak aura here. So if you're using my weak auras, you no longer have to use the Galactic Guardian one, you could just get rid of it because this is stock. It's going to happen every single time, and as far as I know, you can't get rid of this. So it's just nice to know, and it looks pretty cool. But we had 26k damage before, and now we have 106k damage. Well, there was a crit in the way, so you didn't see it. Let's try and generate another one. So here, it was 26, 27k by default, 108k now. Or around 110k. So roughly, we're getting about an 80k increase whenever we press Moonfire. And that further incentivizes for you to actually press it when it pops if you want that damage. I said in the guide video that if it's glowing, you're going to want to press it. But I also said in the guide video that if you don't need that rage, and you can just afford to do more damage, then you can hold off on using your Galactic Guardian procs because you don't need it right away. But now, if you're in single target, you could actually use those procs and get that rage, first of all. And then second of all, do more damage with your Moonfire. Now, if you're fighting at least 2 enemies, Swipe, for instance, is 72k. So if you hit 2 enemies with Swipe, then you're doing 150k, 145k. That's what you're doing with Swipe hitting 2 people. So you still kind of want to gauge, depending on how many targets you're fighting, when to actually use this. But in pure single target situations, Soul of the Forest you don't have to use anymore. Galactic Guardian you can use and be perfectly fine. You get that rage increase. You get the damage increase on Moonfire. And really, I just think it's the best talent, hands down now. And also something, before I go off into my Brewmaster, one other small change, it's a passive, your Thick Hide, reduces all damage taken by 6%. On live, this is 10%, so it is just a tiny, tiny bit nerf to our overall damage taken. We are a very, very strong tank, and we really needed a tiny bit of a balance update, I guess, so as not to put Prot Warriors and Guardian Druids so far ahead of every other one. This small, tiny balance nerf was needed, but besides that, that's really it, and let's just go over to the Brewmaster Monk and show you guys what those changes are about. Okay, so I'm here over on my Brewmaster Monk, and there's 2 changes that are happening in 7.1. One of them I can show you, the other one I really can't, but the first one here, let me talk about it. Our artifact weapon. So our Golden Dragon Brew Stash on 7.1, activating Purifying Brew or Iron Skin Brew grants you 10% dodge for 4.5 seconds. On live, it's actually just 1.5 seconds, and if you guys have happened to watch my Brewmaster artifact video where I told you guys the best way to level up your artifact, I did kind of berate this one for being only 1.5 seconds because it wasn't even enough to dodge 1 boss swing, because they swing at about 2.2 swings per second. So you'd actually have to like time it perfectly right, like have a boss timer and everything if you were really trying to get advantage of that 10% dodge. But now, since it's 4.5 seconds, that's actually guaranteeing you at least 2 boss swings, and really, really good for dungeons where you just have that 10% extra dodge. Right now, I have 10% dodge just baseline, right? But with this, I'll have 20% dodge every time that I purify or iron skin brew, and then my mastery is going to keep adding more dodge on top of that. So in theory, I should be having a lot more damage reduction over the course of the fight, over the course of the dungeon, which I think is really, really powerful. Not that powerful, but definitely a good step in the right direction. I did say that after you got overflow, you should go over and try and finish this side of the artifact before you picked up your golden dragons. Now, actually, you can just go ahead and go straight for brew stash after you have all of this other stuff filled out. You go straight for brew stash, and then you can go fill out smashed and whatever else, get fortification, and then dragonfire brew after, and then you should be good. You might want to consider respecking your artifact if you haven't picked up brew stash yet, but if you have, then you know it's just a buff for you. You don't have to worry about it. You don't have to save up more artifact power or anything. But overall, that's nice. It's a step in the right direction, but it's not the greatest. I would like to have seen more just like actual numbers buffs instead of just 4.5 seconds on an artifact trait that isn't that great to begin with. But either way, the other buff that they do have in 7.1 is actually they're going to be getting 15% more armor from their gear. Now, that is going to help with overall physical damage reduction, which is okay. I have 2152 armor right now, so that's with that 15% extra, so I actually have less on live servers. But I don't like that this buff here is actually pushing us more towards the idea that item level over everything, like item level is king, because we get more armor from gear. So if it's a higher item level piece of gear, it's going to have more armor on it, right? And that means that we get more armor from it just in general because we're getting 15% more from that piece of gear. Now, I don't think that's the way to go, because if you see right here, I have 20% haste, right? Roughly, you kind of want to be shooting around 30% haste. So I'm relatively low in the stat priority, right? And if I have a piece of gear that's giving me like 600 haste, but I have a 15 item level upgrade and it gives me crit and mastery or crit versatility, whatever else, and not haste, then I'm actually nerfing myself in a sense because I'm losing that haste, and I need that haste in order to make my keg smash on a shorter cooldown, in order to make my brews on a shorter cooldown, in order to just have a better flow of the class. And if I'm having to trade that haste and those really nice precious secondary stats for more armor in order to just have more armor reduction overall, I'm not sure that's the right way to go. I would have preferred just a flat armor increase for the brewmaster instead of just armor from gear, because I really don't like that item level is the best way to go. Now, I don't want to tell you guys that you should just kind of just drop anything that has low item level and just get the highest pieces you can, but if it's really that big of a difference in math in terms of damage reduction and all that, maybe it is worth just picking up those better pieces of gear because they're just strictly a higher item level. I really don't know what to say to that. I don't have the math to back anything up. I don't have any, info from theory crafters or something that would say that item level is above everything, but that's kind of how this buff is going. At least they thought of something, but I really would have preferred just a flat armor increase. But that's really it, guys. That's the two changes that they have to Brewmaster. The only other change I guess you could say is that our healing spell Effuse, now instead of doing 200% of attack power as a heal, it's going to do 250%. So it's still bad. It's going to take forever for you to heal yourself up. You might as well just have dried mackerel strips in your bag or something in order to recover after a fight. But really, that's it, guys. No love for the Brewmaster, really. Just that one dragon trait, that buff was nice. That was the way to go. But this armor, its item level, just no. It's not the right way. I don't think so. I think they need to revisit this very, very soon. But either way, thank you guys so much for watching. Please leave a like. Please leave a comment. And please subscribe for more news and update and also guides. I'm going to be having Emerald Nightmare guides soon for all the tanks, and then I'm also going to be having a weak auras video and also my LVY setup video. So one more time, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.